Hey everybody, welcome to the GARF Network. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight we are rolling out, it's actually an interview we conducted with filmmaker Rusty Cundieff. Gosh, man, when was this? It was earlier on this year.
Yeah, it was a little bit ago, but we had gotten some time with Rusty to really catch up with him, and I'll tell you what, it was a fun time. Rusty has become one of my just favorite people to sit and talk to.
Yeah, we got to thank Jeff Whitehead. He connected up with the foundation. He connected us with him, and he's really, Jeff's just got unique connections, his experiences, the places he's been, the people he's met, because without Jeff, there's no way someone like Rusty would be breaking off time for us.
Yeah, and I mean, again, thanks to Suze as well for her continued support of the network and all the work she does with the foundation, because without Suze giving us this opportunity, we wouldn't be able to bring you guys this programming and just have the fun that we're having and building this little community with the network. So, again, thanks to Suze and Jeff, and thanks to Rusty, who's just been a great friend since we started in the fall.
For those that don't know Rusty, he directed the Tales from the Hood Trilogy, Sprung. He recently worked on the Creepshow television series. He did the documentary, or his mockumentary, Fear of a Black Hat. Did a lot of television work. He's been really busy over the past 30 plus years. And he's also probably recognize him as an actor as well. He's been in a lot of things. And actually, we had him on for the Tales from the Hood. Was it the 25th, or was it, golly?
Yeah, 25th. Yeah, 25th. It's hard to think. That was almost a year ago, and we're already talking about that would be the 26th anniversary in October, which is coming up quick. But it was funny. I was sitting upstairs and I was flipping through the channels, and Tales from the Hood was on, and I turned and it was Rusty. The segment that Rusty was acting in was on with David Alan Grier, and I was like, I know what I'm doing for the next 45 minutes or so. So I'm going to watch Rusty and the film. It's been a couple of months since I saw it, so it was nice to revisit it.
But if you recall, when we had the cast on, I guess we hadn't dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's with the YouTube folks. So when we'd roll out the Tales from the Hood footage, we kept getting axed on YouTube. Yeah. It was exciting to have so many viewers piling on, and then to see it just drop to like
yeah. I mean, the early days, back in when it was the wild west, and we weren't know what we were doing, and we were just kind of winging it. But that was fun, because that was what's his name, Brandon, had been watching, who played the little boy in that segment. And we we invited him on. So that was like our first big surprise, that we had someone watching that we were able to invite. And that was a fun show. I watched that show a couple of months ago just to go back and revisit it. And that was fun to watch. Again, Rusty and that whole crew that worked with him, just very reminiscent of George, and just their approach to film, and the people they work with all seemed like a nice family.
Yeah, and early on we stacked the show with some, heavy hitting reunions where we had the whole screen loaded with folks. So it was nice to bring Rusty back, just have him for a one-on-one interview. And honestly, I can't even remember if the purpose of the interview was to just talk about only his time growing up in Pittsburgh, but I think maybe it just took that much time that you're like, you know what, this is kind of a thing, let's stop here.
Yeah. And as you'll see in the episode, sit back and watch it. Rusty really paints a picture of Pittsburgh in the 70s, and really goes into some great stories that Eric and I were like, wow, the man's a great storyteller. Very fond memories of Pittsburgh, and we were excited to just sit and let him reminisce about his hometown, and hope we can catch up to him whenever he comes back, because I think it's his sister that still lives in Pittsburgh.
I think so. That's right.
So we'll have to keep in touch with him. Anytime he makes it out to the Berg, we'll have to catch up with him and sit and hear some more stories.
Maybe give us a reason to catch a Pirates game.
Yeah, there we go.
I've always wanted to watch a game in that stadium. Have you done that?
No, it's like I've been to a Steelers game, but I've never gone. I want to do like a mid-afternoon Pirates game to see the city during the day. And Reeve and I were out in Pittsburgh the week after Living Dead weekend. We hopped into the city real quick for some stuff, and we were downtown. We went to Market Square and we're waiting for lunch, and I was like, why is it so busy? And then I look around and there's like 45 Mets fans around me. And then I looked at the schedule and I realized that the Pirates were playing the Mets in the afternoon, and we were hitting all the folks coming into the city. So I was like, man, if we didn't have to go anywhere the next day, I would have said to Reeve, I was like, tickets are probably cheap. Let's go to a game. We'll probably have a good time. But we were unable to squeeze it in. But hopefully to see a game at PNC Park is high on my list.
Or they probably have concerts there too. That'd be pretty cool.
I think they have them at Heinz Field, because I saw Garth at Heinz Field, and he packed it with like 70,000 folks, and I think that's where they do it. But that's a fun place to see a concert. Absolute blast.
Well, you mentioned Living Dead Weekend, and actually this is kind of a surprise rush show. We usually like to get ahead of the announcements a little, at least a couple weeks ahead, but we wanted to make sure and get a standard show in this month. I know we did the live panel shows earlier on over the Living Dead Weekend, over the July 4th weekend, but those weren't really pre-announced either. So I just wanted to, get one of these in before July was over.
Yeah. I mean, I had a blast doing those panels. It was fun to do these live, and it was fun to go back and revisit more Night Riders with some different folks. And, these were stories that, Eric and I had, been listening to and hearing about and had been told. But those Night Rider stories are still funny. And I don't think I'd ever get tired of them. To hear like Marty and Tasso, especially those two, and then you throw Tom into the mix, that's just, I would love to jog their memories every few months. I'm like, have you thought of any more Night Rider stories yet? Anything you forgot to tell us? And that would just be fun to revisit that every so often, just to see what else comes up, because there still has to be more out there.
And if you're listening and not sure what we're talking about, earlier this month we did a couple of live streams. We didn't really announce them beforehand. We just kind of rolled them out really a couple minutes before we started. And but all things said, I think it worked out great. Actually, I haven't really had a chance to go back and look at it, but just the little bit that I did, the audio quality and everything sounded great. And a great surprise on the Night Riders panel was Gary Lottie. He was very talkative, had a lot to say about his experiences, and also Ken Kiesel is his last name.
Yeah, Ken Kiesel.
He had a lot to say. Those are two guys I think we need to round up in the future, and Ken especially, because he was on Dawn, he wasn't on Dawn, but he has some stuff to say about Dawn.
He has stuff to say about Dawn. He played a zombie in Day, and he did costuming for Night Rider. So that was an interesting addition that I wasn't expecting, and then I was like, Ken Kiesel's on? Let's just roll with it, because
that was really cool. Yeah,
I hadn't gotten to meet him before.
So I encountered him walking up on the stage, and I was like, okay, this is Night Rider's panel. Okay, cool. You costume, sweet, awesome. And then we went away with it.
yeah. No, I mean, it was just kind of neat, because I was like, I kept looking at him, and I'm like, I wonder what else he has to say. So we should definitely talk to him and do some more supplemental stuff. But Gary Lottie, I think once he kind of got into the rhythm and seeing what the weekend was about, started to really loosen up, and I think it helped jog his memory. And we were talking one night after the show, and I said, if you haven't watched it in a while, I said, go back and revisit it, because what we found is the guys that are going back and watching it again are remembering so much more. And it's taking them back to that summer. And he was a blast to be with. And Albert, he was quiet, but he was very nice. And I was glad both those guys came, thanks to Jeff and the GARF for putting that together, because I think they were really a hit for some of the fans that had been sticking with us through April and the Night Riders reunions.
Yeah, both of those guys were at the GARF table all weekend. And suddenly with those two added to the convention lineup, there was, I want to say, 13 Night Riders guests. So that can fill up a poster pretty quick.
And good friend of the show, Stephen Demmer, had a poster that he filled up pretty quick. It was neat to see it kind of fill up, because you're like, oh my God, and this person's in Night Riders. This person's in Night Riders. And you just kept going down the list, and it filled up quick. But I mean, Living Dead Weekend was, the first big show that we had really had since 2019, especially in Pittsburgh. But I mean, for a lot of us, Living Dead weekend was our first time gathering, and it was nice to not just see old friends, but to finally meet some folks in person for the first time that have been watching the show. And, I was so appreciative of folks that would come up to us and tell us that they'd been watching us. We love the support. We love bringing this stuff to you guys. And it's so nice to just not see you on Facebook, not see you on the show, but to actually connect to you in person and get a chance to just sit and chat was an absolute blast. And I was exhausted when I got home. Let's just put it that way. The 5 days I spent in Pittsburgh were a whirlwind, and I blinked and I was home and back to work on Monday. And I was like, what'd I do last weekend?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to decompress for a day or two, and still going through some of the pictures on my phone. I'm like, oh, I remember that. And it made me really want to get back out there soon. So hopefully we can get a chance to go out into the Berg and do some stuff for the network here soon and bring you guys some more content.
That's right. Yeah, we're working on some. I mean, we always say that we're always working on some stuff. We always got a couple of irons in the fire. And actually, after the interview with Rusty is over, we'll come back and we'll have maybe a couple teasers about that. We haven't heard anything about the next Living Dead weekend. There's usually a fall edition. So
I believe I had seen a post the week after, and I do not believe there is going to be one in Evans City, but that doesn't mean there might not be something at the mall or in general. I know Kevin would do one, if he can, as long as logistics work out, but
could be something more low key, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't foresee him doing, whether it's a film festival or a one-off, like a 1-day event. Big thanks to Kevin and his whole crew, Mandy, Daz does the graphics, Larry with the tours, Kip, running around, thanks to those guys for putting on a great show and finally giving us an opportunity to get back together in person.
Yeah. Want to say hello to Brandon Salisbury, Jace Whitman,
Brandon,
Will Welfley, Victoria. What's up, folks? Good to see you in there.
And friend of the show, Dason Green, and Daryl, the running man Rabideau. We gotta, he ran here like Killian was chasing him. No, it was it's been a great summer. Like Eric said, we wanted to get another show in because we know how chaotic summer can be, especially now that we can do vacations. We've finally got a chance to get this Rusty interview put together, and I think you guys are really going to like it. This was, like I said, a fun one. Rusty's a great storyteller, and we just wanted to get an opportunity to kind of reminisce about Living Dead weekend again because it was such a fun time.
Yep. All right. This thing runs about 43 minutes, so that would put us right about 9:57, or 9:58. So 58. But so we'll see you. We'll see you in a little while.
Pittsburgh at that time, I guess, was about to go through. It was right ahead of a big transition. The mills were still open. You could still drive down, either Howard or Boulevard or with a Parkway and see, the big orange lights at night from the whatever they were melting over there to make steel. So that was still going on. Now it wasn't as prevalent as it would have been in my grandmother's years and my father's. They would tell me stories about actually leaving for work early in the day in a white shirt. You would come home in a gray shirt because the smog was so terrible. But so it wasn't like that. But the mills were definitely there. There were a few bridges that were there that are no longer with us. The trolleys or the streetcars, whatever you want to call them, were still running all over the place. And I used to love taking the trolley or the streetcar with my grandmother, the sound of it, the feel of it, the vibration. And when it stopped, it just got quiet. I absolutely love taking the streetcars. But they were slowly being replaced by buses, more and more bus routes. You know, I also got to live through the great years of the Pirates, you know, with Willie Stargell and Roberto Clemente and Manny Sanguillen and Dave Parker and World Series championships and all that kind of cool stuff that the city and the Pirates just can't afford to do now because of salary caps and the way players are traded and so on and so forth. And they just can't keep, you know, people there. I think the last shot they had at it was the 3 Bs with Bonilla and Bonds. And, you know, then those guys left because people gave them more money. So I got to experience that. I also got to experience the Steelers at Forbes Field one day with my dad when they still sucked terribly. I don't even know who the quarterback was. I can just remember it was cold and having hot chocolate that like burned the hell out of your tongue and being miserable watching these jerks lose this game. But then I was there for, you know, Terry Bradshaw coming along and one of the early black quarterbacks, Gilliam, who played for the Steelers for a while and got to see the Steelers win games. So I was even there for, I think, the brief period where Pittsburgh tried to have a basketball team. And that didn't last too long. So yeah, I saw a lot of interesting stuff. It was basically a fun time to grow up in, but it was a racially charged city at the time. You know, I can remember, you know, we lived when I was first with my parents, and I say first with my parents because I'm adopted. But we lived in Manchester on Liverpool Street. My grandmother lived there. I went to St. Joseph's. I went to Manchester School for like that long. Went to St. Joseph's for, I think, 2 years. And then my family moved to a different part of the north side up on, where were we? We're on Danbury Street, off from Marshall Avenue, which was near a couple of, like 2 or 3 cemeteries were right next to us, or, you know, a quick walk away, which, you know, maybe has something to do with my love of cemeteries and some of the horror films that I like. But you know, we moved there, and, you know, like I said, it was racially charged. I mean, we were a black family moving into a white neighborhood. I remember there was a kid next door to me named Robbie. I don't know his last name, and you wouldn't say it if I did. But I remember going over and trying to play with him, which I managed to do like once, and then his parents were like, no, and then they moved away. But I did make other friends in the neighborhood. Actually, Dan Honorado, who I'm sure a lot of Pittsburghers know, lived not far from me, just like down the block away. So him and some of the other kids I would kind of play with, and we'd ride bikes and all that kind of stuff through the neighborhood. So my father was involved in a lot of different organizations. I used to joke that anything that had the word Negro, Black, Colored, African American in it, he was a member of the board or in some way involved with it. And he had started out, at least when I was young, he was a detective on the City of Pittsburgh Youth Division. And he got his master's in social work. And so he became a social worker. He quit the force, became a social worker. So I was always being dragged to various protests and rallies and different consciousness raising things. But I remember there was a point where he ended up on the Pittsburgh Public School Board. And that was probably somewhere between 73 and 74. So we moved again. We moved to another white neighborhood at Brighton Heights. And I remember that can remember actually going to look at a house with a realtor and having the person come to the door, seeing our family and saying no. And we just never saw the house. But we ultimately moved to Brighton Heights not far off Brighton Boulevard, still close to all the cemeteries, by the way. And the reason I was saying that he was on the school board was because up to that point, I had gone to all Catholic schools. I am not Catholic. My family was Presbyterian, but St. Joseph's and then Annunciation, which was, I think, on St. Charles Street and no longer exists as Annunciation. But I think the church is still there, but the school's not. And I went to school with Dan Honorato and a lot of other kids in the neighborhood. We would walk. But when we moved in '74, the Pittsburgh Press did a expose or something on the school board, the Pittsburgh Public School Board, and discovered that no one on the Pittsburgh Public School Board had a child in public school. And so my dad, after I graduated from Annunciation in 8th grade, decided I needed to go to a public school. So I ended up at Oliver, which was right across the street from the cemeteries, and also directly between, like, the dividing line between the predominantly Black neighborhood, where I had friends and knew a few people, and the predominantly white neighborhood where I lived and had friends and knew a few people. So going to school was very interesting because I would be confused, or like, who am I supposed to hang out with? Because at that time, if you were to go, to lunch at Oliver, there were 2 huge lunch rooms, and I don't think anyone thought of this when they built the school. But what happened was, all the Black kids would be on one side in one lunchroom. All the white kids would be on the other lunchroom. And I know people on both sides, but it was still tough trying to figure out where to hang. And I kind of hated that. The only people that easily traversed this racial median were athletes, because they played together and they got to know each other. So you'd kind of see the athletes shift a little bit. But other than that, it was a fairly segregated situation at Oliver, and all the Black kids would go back home this way. Well, not all of them. Me and some others went the other way. And all the white kids would go that way. Not all of them. There was one white kid named Cletus, who I always thought was far Blacker than me because he lived in the Black neighborhood. So, but that was Oliver High. And then after my first year at Oliver, and I was taking some advanced courses there, and those were fine. But all of the regular courses I took, I can remember telling my father, I got to get out of Oliver High because I'm not athletic. All I have is a brain, and this place is going to ruin it. There was a social studies class I can recall, which wasn't an advanced class, but just, everybody was in there. And I remember the teacher was Mr. Steele. He was really cool. I liked him. But Mr. Steele, for the final, wrote on the blackboard, I think, like 30 or 40 questions. And he wrote the answers to the 30 or 40 questions and basically said, hey, if you study these questions, you will pass this quiz. You'll pass the final. And so, I was a little bit of an egghead. So I went home, I studied those, and then I opened the book and I studied other stuff, and I studied all this stuff. So I go for the final, and of course, it's just those questions in the same exact order. And people flunked it, which is sad and depressing. That's what happened. So I told my dad, I understand that you're on the school board, and it's a public school board, but you got to get me out of here. So my grandmother had been a domestic for part of her life. She worked, she did a lot of different things. One of her friends had a restaurant for a while, but she worked as a domestic for a while in Seickley Heights. And I don't know how I ever even heard of Seickley Academy. It might have come from my grandmother. I don't know. But I told my dad I wanted to go to Seickley Academy. And I had no idea what the hell that was. But I just knew I wanted out of Oliver. So he took me down there, and I applied. And I don't know if I took a test. I don't even know what I had to do. But somehow or another, that would have been 10th grade. And that was an eye-opening experience as well. Because, of course, Seickley Academy was primarily white. There were a couple other Black students there, but not many. And I can remember my first day there. And I got to remember, this is 70, 75, 76. And this was the time of, you know, bell bottoms, paisley shirts, flower print shirts, crazy hair, all of this stuff. So, you know, my first day there, I put on my best fancy paisley silk looking shirt and my bell bottom pants. And I probably had heels that were about this high. And Seickley. Now, here's the thing. So I was there on work study. I was a work study student and got a scholarship. So, you know, because my family couldn't afford to pay whatever Seickley cost. So I got a scholarship, and then I would do some work study around the school. Like in the summer, I would go help clean lockers and desks and shit like that. So anyhow, so my first day, I show up in all this, you know, cool stuff, 1970 style. You know, a little pimpish, but that was the style. Even white guys, that was the style, but not at Seickley. So I show up there, and everyone is wearing these straight leg corduroy pants. I didn't even know where you would get such a thing. And then deck shoes, topsiders, and clam diggers, and Izod pullover shirts, or Brooks Brothers button-down collared shirts, all which looked terrible to me. And in fact, I can remember thinking that, oh my God, all these white kids are on scholarship like me. They're so poor, they can't afford decent clothes. Of course, then I learned that this was just the style of the super rich in Seickley. This is what they did. So it was interesting, because I was used to poor blacks, working class blacks, poor whites, working class whites. And this was a whole different group of people. And these were people who, for the most part, had money for some generations, and they dealt with money, and how they dealt with it was very different than anyone that I knew. And so, but this was a style. So that was me basically up to high school. There is a point that I became aware of Night of the Living Dead and Dwayne Jones, whose name I would not have known, because when I was still at Annunciation, my grandmother brought me a little black and white TV that I was allowed to keep in my room. And on Saturday nights, even though my parents told me not to, I would stay up late and watch Chiller Theater, which was you know, Bill Cardell, Chilly Billy Cardell. Yeah, that was, I guess that's how he said it back then. And I'm positive that the first time that I saw Night of the Living Dead was probably on Chiller Theater, and it was pretty frightening, because prior to that, the monsters that I had seen were, you know, Frankenstein, Dracula, werewolf, and things like that, which were scary when you're young. But as you get a little bit older, you kind of realize you're not going to run into these people. But the monsters, or the zombies, in Night of the Living Dead felt a little more possible, because they were just people. And I live near 3 cemeteries, by the way. So that was, I think, my first recollection of Night of the Living Dead. And I remember it being a pretty terrifying movie at the time. It was, you know, I think I mentioned this to someone before, but, you know, at the age that I was when I saw it, and as unenlightened as I was, though my dad was involved in every Black African thing you can imagine, it didn't strike me that the lead in this, or one of the central characters in this, was a Black actor. And perhaps that was because he was so good at what he was doing, or maybe it was because it was not it was not pointed out as a story point. There was never a mention of it as in, oh, and here's this black guy telling us what to do and kind of bossing folks around. Later, I would say, maybe probably not that much later, maybe a few years down the road, seeing the film again, you start to go, oh my God, I can't believe that this guy is doing these things, because a lot of what he was doing in the film is stuff that would normally have gone to a white protagonist. And the fact that he was slapping white women around and telling folks to shut up and I'm in charge and all this kind of stuff to an all white cast was, pretty interesting. I had never seen anything like that. If you wanted to see someone slap white people around, you had to go to blaxploitation films. They slapped all kind of white people around, but not in normal films made by white directors and producers. So it was an interesting change for sure. Dawn of the Dead. Yes, Dawn of the Dead was filmed, I believe, like my last year or so in high school. And there were, I wish I had somehow joined this posse, but there were some students from Seickley who ended up being zombies. I can't remember this kid's name now, but anytime I watch the movie, I see him. He comes in when they're in the mall, and he's like one of the first zombies killed in the mall, because he's trying to, I'm pretty sure this is him. He's trying to get through, and he was a strange kid anyhow, because he would always wear blazers to school, and he wasn't in any, I don't think he played a sport. It's Seickley on game day. The team had to wear blazers to travel, or if they were playing a game. So, but this kid would always have a thing on, and I believe he wore an ascot. Anyhow, he was in Dawn of the Dead, and I remember when I saw the movie, I was like, "That's so cool! He's in Dawn of the Dead. I wish I had gone out there to the mall." but I didn't. So yes, at that point, I did know who George Romero was, and I was very aware of Dawn of the Dead, which was actually in some ways, was it more frightening? No, I don't feel like it was more frightening. Something about black and white to me is just scary and moody. I like film noir, and I love black and white films. That said, Dawn of the Dead was really interesting because, again, you had a black protagonist in with this main group of folks. The white character, as I recall, the other cop, or the other, I guess he was a cop. There was a black cop and a white cop, and then it was like a pilot and his girlfriend or something like that. So the white cop was the crazy, out of control one, which I don't know that George Romero realized it then, but maybe did. But that was so often how a black character would have been portrayed. They would have been the crazy one, and the white guy would have been, "You need to calm down," So, but it was a reversal. So it kind of kept up what happened in Night of the Living Dead, which is having this strong black male presence that was, kind of running the show. I will say, sidebar, Night of the Living Dead, though there was the black guy was running the show, he was also wrong because he kept trying to get everybody to stay upstairs, and ultimately what saved him so that he could ultimately be killed by the police was going down in the basement, which is where they probably all should have gone to begin with. But anyhow, so Dawn of the Dead, that whole film was very present for me during that period. And I don't know where I would have seen it. I don't know. I can't remember where I was when I saw it for the first time, but I just remember seeing my classmates or at least one of them in the movie and being kind of like, missed a chance. I mean, the acting bug had definitely hit me. I had started kind of doing stand-up comedy in a way, because I would do stand-up at Seickley in the class. Like one of my classes, Mr. Diven, he had it was a business class. But sometimes if we finished early, I would come up and do a routine, like I'd do a Steve Martin thing, or I'd do something ridiculous. But I had also, in grade school, at Annunciation, shot a documentary. And so I had done that on Super 8 and kind of spliced that together. And then I can also remember, even before that, at St. Joseph's back in Manchester, being someplace one day and taking a bunch of boxes and stacking them together as if they were a film camera and pretending to shoot something. Where I got that idea, cannot tell you, but it's a a memory in the back of my head. Now, I can't say that I was looking to do well. No, I guess I take that back. I would write little short scripts at Seickley. Sometimes they'd be like a play. Sometimes it would be designed to be a movie thing. Like so I was really aware of editing and how you could use editing to create tension. So I had some script that I quasi remember writing of 8th period or 4th period or something like that. And it was just, the idea was going to be all these shots of students breaking pencils and turning pages and chewing gum and just being stressed out by 4th period. So, I would say that whatever that was in my head, I won't attribute all of that to George Romero, but I'm sure watching films like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, would have contributed to that. And there was a student there named Courtney Joyner, who has gone on to write a bunch of Western books. But Courtney actually taught a class at Seickley. Now, he was a student, but he looked like a teacher. He was one of these people that looked old before he was 20. And there was a program at Seickley Academy called the May program. So in July, regular school would end, and during the May program, you could kind of create your own thing to follow, your own group of classes. So, and people would offer up like some really weird, interesting classes. And if you were a student and you knew enough about something, you could teach a class. So like one kid taught how to fix your car, but Courtney had a class on film. And so he talked a lot about all of the monster kind of monster movies, because he was very much into that and still is. And he, as I remember now, talked about George Romero. And I don't think that was like a whole lecture on George, but his name definitely came up in the class. And that would have been actually in 77, prior to Dawn of the Dead, because Courtney graduated a year ahead of me. So what I would do, earlier, prior to Night of the Living Dead, seeing Frankenstein and Dracula and some of the other crazy things that I would see on the Late Show. And when I got scared, I would take my sleeping bag and sneak into my parents' room and sleep at the foot of the bed, because I figured that way, if some shit went down, they'd be there to protect me. And then, they were actually, well, I'm not sure my dad knew what he was getting into with this one, because he took me I remember him taking me to see The Exorcist, and that was truly scary. And I remember being really scared by that. But at the same time, I was too old to, go lay in the bed, but lay at the foot of their bed. But I did have bunk beds, and that was calming because they were made out of some heavy wood. And I was like, well, ain't no way the devil's going to be able to bounce these beds around. I'm okay here. I knew by the time I left Seickley that I wanted to be an actor or a performer. I wouldn't say that I knew I wanted to direct, but I was already, like I said, writing short plays and short stories and things that could be shot if someone had wanted to do such a thing. So I initially wanted to come to Los Angeles. I went to, I can remember that year was a terribly cold winter. And most of the schools that I visited, because I visited schools with my father, were in the Northeast. A lot of them were in Boston or Syracuse, Ithaca, Brown. Where else did we go? What is it? Not Edison. The acting school. I'm blanking on the name right now. They have a lot of actors come out in Boston. Anyhow, we went to all these schools, and it was cold as I don't know what. And I can remember we had some days where school was canceled just because it was so damn cold. And as I said, I knew I wanted to go into acting, or at least that's what I felt at the time. Before that, I had told my parents I was going to be a doctor. And somewhere at Seickley, in a biology class, and between doing that and being in plays, I'm like, I don't want to be a doctor. This is terrible. I want to perform, and I want to be involved in the arts. So I really wanted to come to Los Angeles. But by the time I told my dad I wanted to apply to USC, University of Southern California, he was like, I'm not writing another check for another admission. I'm done. I think I had already applied to, I don't know how many schools, definitely all the ones that I went and visited. And then, so he's like, I'm just not going to do it. And I had, you get all this stuff in the mail, different schools that want you to check them out and come to them. So I was so tired of Pittsburgh and the cold, and really wanted to go to California, Los Angeles, where I figured it would be warm and I'd be able to become an actor or something. So I had gotten an application from this school in New Orleans called Loyola University. And we had gone there to New Orleans when I was probably like 11 or 12 for a vacation, because my dad's fraternity had their big hoorah there. He took the family down. And so all I knew of New Orleans was whatever I did as an 11 or 12-year-old there, which had nothing to do with Bourbon Street, because I was 11 or 12. And I knew that it was south. And on the cover of the admissions thing that they sent me, people were walking in shorts and short sleeves, so it looked warm. So I applied there. They had an acting and a TV thing, and I applied there without telling my father, and got accepted and turned down Brown and all these other places, and went where it was warm to study acting and TV in New Orleans. And while I was there, I was still determined to come to LA. So while I was there, I got, I somehow saved up some money, and I transferred out of Loyola. I sent the stuff out to University of Southern California and got accepted out there. So then the second surprise was when I came home for the summer from New Orleans, telling my parents, I'm going to another school in Southern California. And that's how I ended up in Los Angeles. Well, my parents, both deceased now, but I would come back quite often to visit them. My sister's still there, and her kid. And I haven't been back in a while since my parents have died. I don't get back as much as I did. But I've gone back, and I've done some stuff with some of the folks at Steel Town, and for a long time, I tried to convince my wife to move back to Pittsburgh, and she never agreed to do it, probably wisely at the time anyhow. But I still hold a very, I think, strong connection to Pittsburgh, be it through the Steelers and sports, or, just the fact, I have pictures of Pittsburgh skyline in my in one of the bathrooms. And I think Pittsburgh people always have a place in their heart for Pittsburgh. So I believe I've lost my Pittsburgh accent, which I worked very hard to do even while I was in Pittsburgh, because, being at Seickley Academy, people did not talk with the same terrible Pittsburgh accent that a lot of Pittsburghers have, the whole Don and at and all that stuff. Like, it's so even there, they were like, why do you talk like that? And so I started to kind of push away from some of those things. But other than that, you can't make me much happier than taking me to Woolies Fish Market or getting me a Permanis or something like that. I'm very happy with that. George is known as a person that did, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and that's where a lot of people know him from. And I am not an expert on him by any stretch of the imagination, and I have not seen all of his films. However, there's some of the films of his that I've seen that really strike me as interesting and have, quite possibly, I haven't, you don't know it while you're looking at it, but perhaps have influenced, how I deal with horror or thriller films in a way. So, for instance, there's Season of the Witch, which is, I can't remember when I first saw it, but it's such an interesting film. And Season of the Witch and Martin are two of his films that I really like because of how they not only deal with the monster question, but it's all this relationship stuff. I don't think he gets enough credit for how he dealt with relationships. Season of the Witch, all of his movies, he's got strong character relationships and how people deal with each other in Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead as well. But you look at Season of the Witch, it's this film where you're following this woman who's kind of going through this crisis of dealing with her husband and her daughter and who she is and what she is. And it's just, to me, it's just really interesting. It's not a typical witch movie, whatever a typical witch movie it is. This is not that. It has layers to it. It has layers to the character, and this woman goes through a transformation, which doesn't always happen in horror films, because so many horror films are about, let me just get away from the horror. So there's no transformation. It's a chase. It's a this. It's a that. But this film, it has all these relationship beats and crazy cool dialogue, kind of between her husband, her girlfriend's, not her girlfriend's, her daughter's boyfriend, who she ends up sleeping with, a friend of hers who was going through her own, midlife crisis or whatever it is. It's so it's more than just a movie about a witch. And I would say the same thing about Martin, which is kind of like a vampire serial killer movie, but it's not a normal vampire movie, which I love because, you know, when I was a kid, I liked Dracula, and the cape was cool and all that stuff. But I kind of was over vampires at a certain point because it became very, very, very predictable, which I found annoying. And, you know, Anne Rice kind of brought it back, and I kind of got back into them again. Then I got out of it again because of what's that terrible, well, I shouldn't say that, but the kind of romantic vampires that came after Anne Rice and it was a TV show, and just I hated it. And I still don't much like the traditional treatment of vampires. But Martin is, you know, there's a couple other vampire movies that I will reference in why I like Martin. There's one called A Girl Walks, I think it's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which is amazing, and Let the Right One In, the original German version. If you look at those and then you look at Martin, you'll feel some of the same things, which is these films, yes, there's a vampire, but it's not about being a vampire. It's about who these people are and how they're relating to the world and how they're relating and trying to deal with their own issues. And to me, that's much more interesting than just, oh, here's another vampire we're going to run from. We're going to kind of get a stake through its heart, all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But he manages to deal with this relationship stuff, and he manages to deal with social commentary in both of these films, where, you know, and as well as in Dawn of the Dead, by the way. But, you know, race comes up, or classism comes up. You know, in Martin, you have this this guy who's, you know, I don't know what his relationship. I can't remember what his relationship is to Martin, but he's like this older guy, and he's a staunch Catholic, and he goes to church, and he, you know, is arguing with the young pastor coming in. So there's all these kinds of things, and you have Martin, who is a vampire, but he goes out in the day, and he, you know, he actually says to people, is like, everything you think about vampires is wrong. You're totally ridiculous. And, you know, what's cool about it is, were it not for the flashbacks, because you see Martin, I think you see him in black and white. I'm pretty sure you see him in black and white, but it's like where he, you know, how long he's been around. But if it weren't for that, you would almost not even know if he was really a vampire. He'd just be a crazy person, you know, kind of dealing with these weird issues. And then he's got these sexual hangups. I think he's like a vampire virgin, though he's like laying on top of these women. And so I think, you know, like I said, I haven't seen all of George's movies. Knight Rider, Creepshow, those I remember. And I love Creepshow, by the way. My favorite thing in that was just all the roaches and bugs. That was just like the craziest shit ever. But these things that George does in these other movies, where he really digs into who people are and how they live their life, is, I think it's kind of overlooked by a lot of people. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not overlooked by people who really know his work. And I don't know all his work, but I do think that, you know, it's a skill set that he had, that people don't realize. And he also in these things had a lot of eroticism too. I mean, you know, you could, as a young person or as a horny person, see some boobies. and I think all of these films that I mentioned, but the cool part about it was, at least in my opinion now, was that they were done. It was done in a way that, at least in my recollection, did not feel like you were doing it just for the sake of showing nudity. It seemed like it was part of the story and how people lived. You know, I hate movies now where I'll watch something and people who have just had sex, you know, women get up out of bed and they're pulling the cover over themselves. It's like, wait a second, weren't you just like up under this guy doing all this kind of stuff? And now all of a sudden you got to pull this thing over your breasts to get out of bed. It's just so, it takes me out of the movie for like that long. I hate it. But you never see that in a George Romero movie. If someone was having sex, if they were fucking and they were naked, they're going to be naked when they stand up. And to me, that's just honest. If you're not, you know, doing it, you know, just to have people running up and down the beach with things jiggling all over the place. So I think that's another part of what he's done in certain films that people don't realize, that he was actually good with a certain type of eroticism. So yeah, so those are a couple of things that I would say about Romero that I don't think people that I think affected how I deal with filmmaking and you know, when I look at the stuff that I like to write, you know, I like to put meaning into things. I don't want to do a werewolf movie just to do a werewolf movie. I don't even want to do a werewolf movie, but if I did, I wouldn't do it just to do a werewolf movie or just to goof around with vampires. I would want to have something that kind of spoke to social things, something that kind of spoke to human nature in a way. And I think that George was really good at that.
All right. We're live. What's up, Matt? I think you're on mute. Oh.
Yeah, I am.
Welcome back.
I told you Rusty was a hell of a storyteller.
I compare it to when I went back and was looking at because the Tina footage that we released recently, we've been sitting on that for a while, and just going back, it's like, wow, this is way better than I remember, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you're sitting there, it's just kind of like you're having a conversation, and then you're like, when you cut down to just the meat of the content, and then you read, wow, this is 43 minutes of Rusty telling stories, you know?
Yeah, I would say we sat with Rusty for what, a good little over an hour. And like you said, we were just having a conversation with him, and you know, tell us about growing up in Pittsburgh and your influences. And I loved when he was talking about George. You know, he kept picking up on Season of the Witch and Martin. You know, two movies that you always hear about Martin, but to hear him kind of dive a little deeper into Season of the Witch, just from his perspective, it isn't something we hear a lot of. And just like I said, he painted a picture of Pittsburgh in the 70s.
Yeah.
And growing up. And he talked, you know, the whole time. Like, I mean, we would kind of get in there a little bit to kind of say, you know, what about this or what about that? And he would go on for, you know, a long time. And, you know, that just goes to show you, you know, how great his storytelling translates into his films too.
Yeah, I want to say we only asked maybe 5 questions because there wasn't a whole lot of us that I edited out. The most that we talked was when we were trying to determine the zombie that he went to high school with.
Yeah,
which was totally cool. That was random as hell, amazing.
Yeah,
and that's definitely a key zombie. I always, you know, that's we even told him, we were like, dude, we know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, because I'm looking at Rusty's talking and he says that, and I'm looking at you and you're kind of like looking at me, and we're like, we both have this like realization, like we knew exactly who he was talking about, but we had to wait for him to pause in speaking because we were like, yeah, we know who that is. We know exactly who that is. And it was just just a nice little new piece of Dawn trivia that, hey, that guy went to the same school as Rusty did, and he knew him, and just kind of endears us a little bit more to a film like Dawn.
Hey, something I forgot to mention on the front end. You and I have made a couple of podcast appearances over the last few weeks. I made an appearance on Dead Pit Radio on their midweek obliteration show. We mostly talked about Romero and the GARF. And also I appeared on At the Devil's Ball, which our friend Rich is co-host of. We talked about Summer Camp Nightmare on that, which is just one of my all-time favorite films. And you were on one of our buddy Will's show recently.
Yeah, Signals from Pittsburgh. Me and Will and Brittany decided to do a match, a movie, and we broke down, unfortunately, Universal Soldier: The Return, starring Bill Goldberg.
Were you forced into that?
I wouldn't.
Will's trying to force me into content. That's why I'm asking.
I would have, of all the things that star Bill Goldberg, he picks that movie. Why didn't he pick Santa's Sleigh?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever it is. And it's like, he picked a great match, him and DDP from Halloween Havoc 98, which was, it should have been a better match, but of course Bill just kind of zonked himself out. But
so you didn't pick the match either?
No.
I thought it was our choice. What the? Yeah. I'm trying to get I'm supposed to be making an appearance here, and I thought we had something lined up, and he's like, now we're gonna switch to this. I'm like,
no.
I've never even seen that match.
Yeah, I had to sloth through this movie.
No.
And I'm like, this is hard. I love Universal Soldier. I think it's a great. The sequels. I'm like, this one, we're watching this.
The first one's actually pretty decent. For a little psychotic edge to it. It's a little weird out there. But
this one is made in I think it was 99, and it has that it low budget. It was like a Sci-Fi Channel movie that they tried to make into a big budget film, and it didn't work. So unfortunately, I don't want to say I shit on the movie, but I'm not favorable to it. I had more fun watching the match than, because, Will knows I'm a Goldberg mark. He is not. So that made for a great time. And Brittany's like, I know Bill Goldberg's a wrestler because I'm doing a show about wrestling.
Right.
So that, that was a fun dynamic that we had between the three of us.
Well, let me tell you, we started with Rock and Hogan and Suburban Commando, and now I think we're on Mr. Nanny and Hogan versus Undertaker. I've never even seen the match. Or Mr. Nanny.
That Tuesday in Texas where Taker wins the title for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you know what? We need to remove Will as head booker.
Try him.
And we need to put Dusty back in there or something, because this isn't working. You're gonna end up with the finger poke of doom and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 or something.
I've been meaning to listen to the episode, and I assumed these were two blasé classics, and
no, they were not. They were not my choices. I would not have picked those choices for that episode, but it made it even more fun because I was a little I wasn't in control of the narrative, and I had to run with it, and I made the best of it. So Signals from Pittsburgh with Will Welfley and Brittany. Check it out for some extra GARF content. I think you guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, you can find Signals from Pittsburgh, At the Devil's Ball, and Dead Pit Radio on iTunes and probably anywhere else where you regularly download podcasts. Also, we didn't mention up front, definitely check out the Foundation website and have a look at the merch that's up there. We still have the Knight Riders 40th anniversary merchandise. I don't think the mugs are quite ready yet. They're still up for pre-order.
Don't think so. Yep, pre-order.
And actually, while we were at the Living Dead weekend, we were able to check out some designs for a potential King Billy sword replica. So that's going to be to scale, like really super well done. So that'll be a little pricey, but it'll be an amazing piece, I imagine.
You can slay the dragon with an authentic replica.
And let's see. And also, like this T-shirt, all sorts of hoodies, all sorts of Knight Riders merch, plus new general Foundation merchandise as well. All sorts of stuff.
And don't forget the Knight Riders and the GARF Foundation pins. They were a hot item.
That's right.
Guys, those pins, especially those GARF Foundation pins in the designs of the original trilogy, I absolutely love those. Each one is set with the font and the color of each film, and it just absolutely beautiful work. Those guys did a great job. And again, all the merch that's there to help support the foundation. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and picking stuff up and representing the GARF with that. We really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we are also, we're kind of putting our heads together, trying to get some more content developed for the network so that we can have more, shows airing routinely. And so that's in the early stages, but we hope to be getting that rolling in the near future. And also, Matt, I don't know, Matt, did you want to tease any? Again, we mentioned irons in the fire, but I don't know.
So probably our next show is going to be involved with someone who you may not know the name of. You probably do. You've seen some of his work inside of the ring and outside. A great guy who's done some awesome work over the last year or so. I don't want to tease too much because this is going to be a fun one for us to get inside his head and figure out how his mind works and what he creates. And the other show after that, I don't know if many folks have heard of this guy. He started working with George in the 80s. Continued through. He's worked in the movie industry pretty steadily over the last 30 some years. He's done some TV shows, but you're probably going to want to stay tuned for some of these. All we got to do is get them scheduled, guys, and we're there. But trust me, at least the next two shows are going to be fantastic. Plus, like Eric said, we have a lot of stuff on this network brewing, ready to boil over and bring to you guys. So we don't want to bring something out just to bring it out. We really work hard at making sure the content we bring you is engaging. The content is what you want. We want to educate and share and expand your knowledge of horror and everyone in it. So please understand, we are working tirelessly behind the scenes to get everything together so that we can open the floodgates and keep you guys entertained however often we can.
Yeah, we're also cooking up some plans to develop some more pre-recorded content like the Rusty interview, but possibly in person, kind of step our games up a little bit and go a little deeper on this and spend some in-person time and take more time to round out these interviews instead of having to rush off online or whatever. So we've got enough of that planned to fill out the rest of the year, plus other stuff as well on top of that we're working on.
See, my arm, that's how long the list is that we have. We got together, about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, and it's about 15 items that all we have to do is, just start going down the list, putting them together. We know it's summer. We know you guys are, out and about enjoying the nice weather and vacationing, and we appreciate you guys sticking with us. So we're always looking forward and looking at what we could be doing and bringing you guys the most exciting content, because our goal is to keep documenting independent horror from every angle we can and always bring you guys the stories that you never heard, or hear the stories from folks that were there but never got a chance to tell them. So we're always trying to find new and engaging ways to have fun, bring you guys this extra stuff, and that's all we want to keep doing. So keep with us while we get all this stuff sorted out, and once we get rolling, there's not going to be any stopping us for a while.
Absolutely. You make me wish I had Ollie and Jerry's "Ain't No Stopping Us" to queue up right now. Alas, but I only have the outro bumper. But
Quick, get Felcher here so we can get him out.
But yeah, we should have an announcement about these next couple of shows coming up soon. But until next time, I'm Eric,
and I'm Matt,
and we'll see you next time on the GARF Network.